Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be working on a 2007 Honda Odyssey. We're going to be doing rear and front, or front and rear valve cover gaskets on this. Valve cover gaskets are leaking on here. We're going to be doing a valve cover gasket kit. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. All right, guys, so first we're going to be starting off by disconnecting the negative battery terminal, and then we're going to take off the engine cover, top engine cover. Once we get that off, we'll have access to the intake. We're gonna take off the intake, and we're not gonna. Well, yeah, we'll probably end up taking it out completely, disconnecting the intake from, of course, the throttle body, the air intake. We may back this out a little bit, or maybe take it off. So once we get past that point, we'll catch up on the next steps. So the top bolts I took off earlier were 10mm bolts, and these inner bolts are 12mm. There's actually two nuts. They're all 12mm. So notice I'm switching to the magnetic socket because I'm trying to get a bolt that I can't see, I can't really reach, and I don't want it to fall down and run the risk of me losing it. It's a really cool tool. It's a magnetic socket, 10mm. It has a magnetic, piece right there that holds onto the bolts and the nuts. If you're interested in where I got something like this, just send me a comment down below, and I'll be sure to forward you the link. So see how that works? Holds on and saves your bolt. All right, so on the air intake, you got 4 8mm bolts. Want to disconnect the throttle body from the intake, you got 4 12mm nuts. Or 2 nuts, 2 bolts actually. Just separate the throttle body from the intake. Once you have the intake completely unbolted, you got the hose disconnected. You got this plug disconnected as well. Then you just want to go ahead and lift up on the intake. Don't forget to take this plug off. All right, lift this up, get it out the way. Now we have great access to the valve cover gaskets. Pretty much from here, it's just pretty much just taking off the valve cover gaskets and replacing the gaskets. Of course, once we get them off, we're also going to clean the surface. This vehicle has a lot of oil that's leaking out of the gaskets. So the front of the motor, side of the motor is all soaked with oil. But what I like to do is I like to get the gasket on first and replace. Once I get it on and replaced and sealed, and then I go ahead and clean it with the necessary cleaners like brake clean or degreasers, right? So that's the way I like to do it. Some people might want to clean it before they actually replace the gasket, but I think during the course of replacing the gasket, you might get some oil seeping out again. So I just rather clean it when it's all replaced. So we're gonna move forward where we're gonna start with the back. I like to start with the back one first because I think the back one is the most challenging out of the two. So I like to get the hard job out of the way first, and then from there it's all downhill, right? So with the valve cover gasket, the valve cover itself has 5 mounting bolts, 3 that you can see in the front. There's 2 a little bit higher towards the back that sit up a little bit higher. And then you have some wire harness pieces, maybe I think 2 10 millimeters that are gonna allow you to detach the wire harness. You have a couple of plugs as well. So once we get that undone, kind of shimmy the wire harness a little bit out the way with the bolts out, we'll be able to sneak the cover out. All right, so let's try that now. It's hard to see these 10 millimeter bolts. What I usually do is just feel for them, you know? So just feel around till you find the location. Takes a little practice. I think I found one right over here. That's one. And then there's one more on this side somewhere. Just gotta feel around for it because it's hard to see. It's right over here. So the wire harness is fairly loose off the valve cover. So undo certain plugs like this to give you more slack from the wire harness so that we'll have better clearance trying to sneak the valve cover out. So this wire harness, a couple of plugs right here that I remove, some like oil pressure sensors, and then the wire harness goes to the back. There's a kind of like a plastic bracket where close to where the oxygen sensors are. If you can release that as well. I'm holding it right now. Let's see if we can get a close up on it. Maybe get a little look at it right here. If you can release this clip as well, this plastic clip, this would give you more room, it'll give you more leverage, not more leverage, but like more, what's the word I'm looking for? Or more slack on the wire harness to be able to sneak this out, because you're gonna need some slack to sneak this out. So disconnecting it even this far is really good. So you do that, and then you could even disconnect it from those sensors. I think there's 202 sensors maybe that it plugs in back here. I can feel 2 plugs. I think I usually do remove that, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now because I want as much slack as possible to make the job a little easier. So what I usually do, I think what I will do is like maybe leave the plug actually plugged together, but the connector goes onto a metal bracket. So if you disconnect it from there, that would be also helpful. Got one undone. And the second one, trying to get that undone now. That's undone, so yeah, definitely got more room when you do that. So then you have 3 coils, ignition coils to unplug as well. They're blue coil connectors right here, 3 of them. All right, that should be about it. That'll give you hopefully enough room to sneak this out. All right, so we're gonna leave it at that. We're gonna take off the 3 mounting bolts in front and the 2 at the back, and then we should have maybe just this hose. We're gonna disconnect it from here as well, and then we're gonna try to sneak the valve cover gasket, the valve cover itself out after that. Be mindful and careful not to drop anything inside these intakes. A lot of techs would put some kind of cover here to make sure nothing drops in there. But if you drop something in there, just be sure to get it out, all right? I'm gonna go ahead and cover it up now. It's just a really good practice because sometimes you'll never know if you actually would drop something in there accidentally. All right, something like a simple shop towel, piece of cardboard, piece of paper, just something to, cover up the hole. So, just help prevent something from falling inside there. That should do it. Okay, and then of course, the last thing, getting off the valve cover gasket, off the valve cover. If you focus over here, if you look at the front cover, you've got 3 coils, ignition coils. The same applies to the back. You've got 3 ignition coils. They've got 3 hex bolts. So once you get these hex bolts out, that may be like a 6mm, get that out. You can pull the coils out and then lay them on top. It just makes it easier to get the valve cover gasket out. All right, so, I think I've seen some techs pull them out, the valve cover gasket, with the coils, but then the coils are pretty long. You just want better clearance, right? So I would usually take the coils out. It just makes it easier, right? So we're gonna do that now. I'm gonna double check the size in the front. Yep, definitely a 6mm Allen key. If you use a socket or just a regular Allen key, either one will work. Again, it's hard to see it. You kind of just have to feel it. So put 2 fingers or a finger or so on the actual hex bolt and just guide the tool down to the center of the bolt in the bolt hole, because it's hard to see, so it's kind of like you gotta just feel for it to get it out. That's what it looks like when it's out. Now we're just gonna prior up on the valve cover a little bit to release the gasket, or release the seal of the gasket rather. And as you can see, it's got a blue gasket. This is definitely not OEM, so this has been replaced already because Honda uses the black gasket. This is an aftermarket gasket that's being used, which is not a problem, but it's just interesting to know that this is not the first time it's been done. So the valve cover gasket leaking, pretty typical. This car has about 160,000 miles on it. So it's needing a second set, looks like, of valve cover gasket replacement. So not completely surprising to me. All right, so to me, this is the hardest part of the job, is sneaking the rear valve cover gasket in, or sneaking it out and sneaking it back in. To me, that's the toughest part of the job. Otherwise, pretty much it's just, nuts and bolts and hoses you're disconnecting. But this part is a little bit tricky, especially when you have the new gasket on and you're trying to sneak it in and you're not wanting the gasket to fall out of place, right? So I forgot to pull the coils out. So that's also what's hindering and probably making it a little bit more tougher. You can see how long these coils are. You got to get them out. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a fight. All right, 3 coils out. Got the harness loose. And just wiggle, pull out, twist, and turn. And fight. All right, a couple of other things you can try. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't, but I'm gonna probably do it now. Let me see if that's gonna help. All right, there's a plug right here. This part of the wire harness goes down to a plug that's probably gonna be for maybe an oil sensor or a power steering sensor. So this part of the wire harness goes down and it actually splits into two. I can feel two plugs. Undo those plugs will give you more slack on this wire harness, right? Because right now I don't have a lot of slack. And yeah, I probably would be able to force this out, but that's half the battle. I can force it out, but with it being this tight, I'm gonna have a lot of trouble getting it in. So I wanna make my job a little easier, even though I may have to take a couple of extra steps. So I'm working on getting the other one, second one unplugged. And so the second one is actually further down. So one goes to, looks like, and I'm not sure what these plugs are going to. I can't remember what they go to, but they're not at the same level. They run down the same route, but they're at two different levels. One stops just shortly below the left side cam cover. Another one goes a little bit further down, closer to the rack, the power steering rack, that is. So got one disconnected, trying to get the other one broken free. So I still only got one undone. I'm gonna try it again to try to get this cover out. Part of the trick is, if you had a second set of hands, like another body, you could have somebody actually pull up and away on this harness like this, and that'll give you a lot more room, right? I noticed something I did forget to take off. There's a on this high pressure power steering line, there is a bracket that mounts on to the top left side of the valve cover gasket, 10mm bolt. Don't forget to take that off. That would definitely probably allow it to come off easier. All right, so high pressure power steering line, there's a 10mm bracket. Hard to see the bolt, hard to see the bracket, but access it. You just kind of feel, you gotta feel for it. So that's one thing I love about making these real-time videos. You're gonna make real-time mistakes. And then part of it is, you know, just kind of thinking about the steps, not wanting to miss a step so much, trying to get it documented, you know. I'm gonna kind of slip my mind, so. But it's all good, because this is what happens in the real world. So it's a 10mm bolt. Once you get that off, then this line will be free from the valve cover gasket. And I'm pretty sure that was my major hookup, hang up, because it was mounted on the valve cover. So look at that. The valve cover is definitely moving more. Still a fight, but looks like it's coming out though. And I'm definitely gonna have to come out on top. Can't let this beat me up, especially on camera. All right, not easy. So that was the point of, you know, that was my whole point of mentioning, listen, you wanna make sure you free this harness up as best as possible, because you've seen how much I had to fight just to get it out. Imagine trying to go in and you've got the rubber gasket you're trying to keep into place and keep from falling out, because if it falls out of place in this groove, you're gonna get a bad seal or no seal, and you're gonna have a leak back there. So when you're going in with the new gasket and this is in place, you have to kind of go in a little bit more easier, so you want more room. So I'm gonna end up trying to free that harness up even more before I try to go back in, but we'll get to that shortly. So we got the rear out, rear valve cover gasket, a real valve cover with the gasket. You can see the aftermarket blue gasket. We're gonna set this off to the side a little bit real quick. I'm actually gonna work on that harness a little bit and try to free it up. But while I'm here, I'm gonna show you a couple of things that we couldn't see earlier, that we can see now. You can see the two plugs that I mentioned earlier that I think they go to the oxygen sensors, right? Yep, this is definitely what? Top upstream oxygen sensor right here. And this is probably a downstream, right? So these two plugs, I didn't actually unplug them, but these plugs, they clip on right here. Right here, this is the clip on. They clip onto a metal bracket. So all I did was hit the tap and release it from the bracket, right? This one and this other one here. And the bracket, if you can see, it's a black bracket right here, look. So, can you see that? All right, so that black bracket. So that's what you can do. You wanna do that to give you more slack from this wiring harness. And then the other two that I'm facing right now, there's one right here. I've already unplugged it actually. And then there's another one coming down, going down this way. I'm gonna try to get that undone. Once I get that undone, I'm gonna have even more room at this left upper part to come up higher with the harness to be able to sneak it in when I'm ready, all right? So we're gonna work on that and we'll get back into it. All right, so we got the rear valve cover gasket or the rear valve cover out. We removed the gasket. Just looking at the aftermarket seal I bought online, paid about maybe $20 on Amazon or eBay. You can get a complete gasket set, front and rear gasket for the valve cover. You've got the spark plug well seals as well, which I'm gonna go over right now because it's very essential to replacing these and not having any issues because these also leak. So not only you can have a leak from the gasket, but you can have a leak, of course, from the spark plug well seals. Leaks out through here, it comes out through here, and kind of falls into the actually the spark plug well area, causes some issues. All right, like misfires. I've seen those as well because you have the oil leaks from these seals. And then also the mountain boats have these grommets, have these metal washers with grommets. You want to replace these as well. So get a kit that has a grommet set. The brand new ones, they're hard to get onto the old boats. So right now this one is a bit worn and soft, so I'm able to sneak it out easy. But I found a lot of times in the past, the new ones are very tough and rigid, and to try to get past this lip that's on the boat is really hard. So I like to soak them in water, hot water, and then take them out and push them through. And as you can see, even though I soaked it up a little bit, not very long, it's still kind of hard to get through. So I'm gonna soak it a little longer because it's really hard to get through right now, right? So soak those in some hot water, and that'll help you to get the rubber a little soft to be able to seep and pass through the boat. And then so I want to show you how to remove these. This is a step that I use, or a method I use to remove these spark plug well seals. You just kind of want to get in here with a flat tip in a corner where the end of the seal meets the valve cover metal. Tap your flat tip in between, pretty much just making a little gouge on the seal. Allow it to lift up and just sneak it out. And that's the way I've been doing it for years, no issues. Some guys might want to do it a little bit nicer and calmer. I do have one of those hook seal removers, but I just love this way to do it because I also tap them in with the hammer, right? So there's many ways to do this. This is the way I've been doing it for years, and I haven't had any issues with this method. Just make sure you're not actually tapping and gouging the metal itself, the soft aluminum, right? Pretty much you want to hit the seal itself and sneak it out, right? So I've seen a lot of guys struggle with this for like 10, 20 minutes trying to get this out. And in this one, it's fairly easy. It looks like maybe the last time it was put in was not a very long time ago, so it's not really stuck in there. And it's pretty clean. Looked like the last guy who did it did a really good job on cleaning the surface, as well as the mating surface on the top of the head is really clean. I didn't have to do much cleaning there, but make sure if yours is clean, has a lot of dirt or debris, you want to use a rag and get some of that dirt and debris off. Sometimes if it's a lot of dirt, a lot of scum that's there, maybe use something like a scuff pad. I use that a lot with some brake cleaner, right? So we got the old ones out. I don't want to mix this up, of course. The new one, I usually would put some silicone spray on it. Let me grab some now because it makes it easy to slip back in there. So I'll usually put some silicone spray to sit in there better. So just put it in like that and just start tapping it in as even as possible. Light taps. Doesn't have to be anything too aggressive. And you can see it kind of even out with the bottom of the aluminum lip area. Once it evens out on all sides, you're good to go, right? If you feel more comfortable, you can use a rubber grommet, a rubber hammer or something like that. Doesn't have to be a metal one. Just want to get it even on all sides. Get the third one in there. All right, so I'm gonna clean this area where the seal goes a little bit with a rag. Put the set the new seal in there. Then we're gonna try to go back on the vehicle. All right, guys. So what ended up happening? You can see we actually have a blue gasket here as a new gasket. Initially, I had a black one in there just a couple minutes ago. What ended up happening is the black one was too small. It wasn't the right size for the gasket. It could have been an issue with the submodel. I just learned that there's 2 engine code options, and depending on which engine code option you have, that'll make a difference in the gasket. So be aware of that when you're buying this gasket. If you're buying this gasket, like maybe especially aftermarket, you have to certain stores, they want the engine code, and so I had to provide the engine code. I'll give you a quick let me show you what the engine code is in case you need to find the engine code like I had to find it right over here. All right, the engine code is not that easy to spot, but it's located right here. I'm tapping it right now. That's where you're gonna find the engine code, right there. It starts with a J, and this one ends with an A, but you're gonna find the engine code right there. So if you're looking through this hole right here of the vehicle, as far as this area, so right through that little port where you have access to the coolant reservoir, just in case you need to provide the engine code for the right gasket. So moving right along, we got the gasket in place. We got the spark plug well seals replaced. And so we're gonna start the, put this valve cover gasket back in now. Or put the valve cover back in. All right, so one thing that has to be done from manufacturer, what Honda usually does, and they recommend you doing, is putting a little bit of RTV or silicone or Honda Bond at the corners of the mating area on the head of the engine, right? So right where the valve cover gasket is gonna go, there's a little corner spot that's actually matches with this corner of the valve cover. So pretty much right about there, you wanna put some silicone. Most people just put it directly on the head, like I just did. You could do both or one, and you wanna get both sides. All right, you wanna make sure you get some RTV on both sides in the corner. That just allows for a better seal. You do that on that surface area right there. So we got that done. And now we're gonna try to go back in with the valve cover. So I'm gonna try something a little different. Earlier, I took the valve cover out through between the harness and the back head. I'm gonna try this time to try to sneak the valve cover gasket over the harness. And then once I get it over the harness, I'm gonna try to slip it in. I think I've done that before, and I'm gonna try it again now to see if that actually is an easier way to get it in, especially without disturbing the gasket where it's sitting in place right now, right? So flip this over. Let me get a little bit of light. All right, so we're gonna try to sneak this in from the top. Like that, and then bring the harness forward. Get the harness out the way a little bit. Bring the harness forward, holding on to the valve cover. Then try to sit it in place. Kind of like that. That worked out pretty good, guys. I usually do it a couple different ways. Sneak it in between the harness and the head, or in this case, sneak it on top of the harness and then slip it through. that worked out pretty good. I'm gonna try to stick to that way in the future. So yeah, so we got that in. One thing you gotta be mindful about is the new spark plug well seals. They're kind of tight, so you want to make sure that they actually seat in place over the lip of the spark plug well. So you got the spark plug well, it's a tube like this. The well seal sits on top, and it has to drop down to meet the bottom of the top of the well. So you got to make sure that's in place. I've seen a lot of times where the seal is sitting on top of the lip, and it'll cause a bad seal, right? And then you have oil leak. So just be a little mindful of that. Usually what I use is like a spot mirror. I'll show you right now to get a good look at it and make sure it's sitting in place. All right, so I usually use one of these spot mirrors right here. A little pro tip, something I actually forgot to mention. Usually what I would do is put a little bit of silicone spray around the new well seal so that it slides easily on the weld, right? So I just like to use the mirror to get in a little close, to get a look and make sure that the seal went around the well and it fell in place, right? So it looks good on all three well areas. So we're gonna go ahead and start bolting down the valve cover in the rear. Then we're gonna start doing the front cover, removing that as well, all right? So we're almost there. All right, guys, like I was trying to tell you earlier, if you soak these in some boiling hot water, it'll allow the rubber gasket to expand when you're pushing the bolt through, because the bolt has a bit of a lip. It's hard to get through in its natural, hard, cold form. So this is a little trick that I started doing a couple years ago. Put it in hot water, and you'll be able to push the bolt through much easier, right? Because I've seen these new grommet get torn open because of trying to force the bolt through, and it's cold and it doesn't expand easily. So soak it in some hot water and allow it to push through much easier. Little pro tip. All right, so we're gonna go on with the bolts now to secure the valve cover. All right. You definitely want to make sure also, even though we sat the gasket in there, the gasket didn't appear to fall out of the valve cover. I'm gonna have to take that mirror to run along the edge of the valve cover to make sure that the seal is still sitting in place to prevent any leaks in the future, right? It's not impossible to get the gasket to fold while trying to install it and have some problems in the future. So you definitely want to double check that before you actually wrap this thing up. So I'm just gonna get these bolts in place and then I'll check it. I probably should check it right before I get the bolts in place, because if it's not sitting in place, the bolts have to come out, right? So I'm pretty confident it is sitting in place. But just for, you know, demonstration purposes, I'm gonna run the mirror back there to make sure that it's all sitting in place. All right, so we got all 5 bolts for the rear valve cover gaskets nice, tight, and secured. I don't know if you caught that, but I actually went around and I did look with the spot mirror to make sure that the seal was in place before I tighten out the bolts. And then so now we're just gonna start to connect all the connectors, necessary connectors for the back wire harness. as well as put the coils back in place and connect everything back up. All the fasteners, all the connectors that we took apart in the back, we got to make sure we get them all back in. All right, so that's what we're going to work on now. And after we get that done, we'll move over to the front. All right, so we got the rear cover back in place and fully installed. We got all the wire harnesses and plugs back in place. Now it's time to move on to the front. We're gonna start off by taking off a couple of these clips. We're gonna take the coils out with the 16 millimeter hex, 5 bolts in the valve cover, and any of the harnesses areas that might be, causing us to not be able to get it out easily. Also, very important, take out the dipstick because you're not going to be able to, because it goes all the way through the valve cover. Get that out, sit that to the side so you don't forget to put that back in. All right, so let's start taking it apart. A nice neat tool, magnetic retriever, in case you drop a bolt or drop a tool. This helps out a lot. Nice little tool to have on the side. You can get that from any local tool or online store. Another nice little tool. This is a adapter. It converts from 1/4 to 3/8. It's magnetic. And it allows for a very low profile extension and adapter conversion. Very cool. I think I bought this at maybe Harbor Freights or another local parts store, but it's a very cool tool to have. It came with another set that goes from 3/8 to 1/2 inch. So I definitely recommend this. Helps out a lot. Give a low profile, shorter distance of an adapter to convert, right? So. So you can see how this rubber grommet is all torn up. I've never actually seen it this torn up. I want to believe it's just poor or cheap quality parts, which is kind of funny because the ones that I got brand new look exactly like this. That's only because I had to run to a local store to get it last minute, because the ones I bought online they look like a better design. The black rubber, they usually sit and hold a little better. They're not as flimsy as these blue rubber seals. I don't know, just a preference. So if you could, the best is always to get the Honda gasket, Honda seals. The manufacturer just usually always works the best, but then they are also, after that, some aftermarkets qualities, they vary, they go up and down. All right, so this is kind of horrible. This definitely causes leak and seepage, right, of oil. All right, you can see that the front was 10 times easier than the back. That's why I like to do the hard job first, get it out the way, because after all that struggling, doing the front, it's just like a downhill motion. You just kind of just walking through the park and, getting the front done. So it's not that bad doing the front. All right, so we got it out. We're gonna do the same process where we're gonna change the spark plug well seals. We're gonna pull out the actual valve cover seal, clean it up, clean this area, and then we're gonna start to go back in with the new gasket and seal. All right, so we got the front valve cover ready to go. We got the new spark plug well seals in there already. Got the new gasket in place. What I like to do is use a little bit of silicone spray if you have some of this, or maybe just a little bit of lube around here. It helps for this, for the weld, the spark plug weld, to slide through the seal without nipping or cutting the seal. I've seen them cut the seals before, so it just allows for easy sliding. A little bit of silicone spray if you have some of that. Now we're gonna set the valve cover in place. This usually is not much of a fight like the back one. As you can see, we pretty much already got it in place. Now I just want to make sure it's sitting around the well, and that fell right into place. Perfect. Looks really good. While you have it like this, before you start to bolt it up, if you have a small mirror of some sort to just get, you know, a visual on a seal, make sure it's sitting in place and it's not folded or hanging out. Seen that happen a couple of times. So you see the seal sitting in place, that looks good. And of course you can see here, all around here on the outside without the mirror, looks good. So we're gonna go back in. We just have to replace the grommets for the old one, and we'll be going back in. I'm gonna bolt this down, put the bolts in by hand. Also, of course, I cleaned up the valve cover gasket, or the valve cover. The top of the cover had some oil on it, so you definitely want to clean that off to prevent, also, number one, any mistakes, mistaken for leaks in the future. So, you know, get it nice and clean so that if someone happens to look at it in the future, a tech doing an oil change or something like that or whatever, they're not thinking that it's leaking because the old, you know, from the previous repair, it wasn't cleaned properly, right? So, all right, so just bolting everything back on, putting the coils back into place, secure all of the wire harness clips and the wire harness, get that back into place. Once we get this valve cover, front valve cover gasket fully secured, we're gonna start going back on with the upper intake and connect it back onto the throttle body, put the air box, just like pretty much how we did it during the removal. Can't help it. Another little pro tip, guys. So I just had this socket fall off because it was just too loose on this, right? So a little pro tip to help prevent that, you just get yourself a little piece of paper. Sometimes even something a little lighter, or a piece of plastic. You just put it over there, and this will allow for a tighter fit of the socket if it's too loose, right? And that won't come off again so easy. Just a little pro tip. All right, so now we're going back up with the installation, the reinstallation of the upper intake. All right, guys, I'm gonna be using an impact on this. Be mindful, you don't wanna use the impact on this very aggressively and, you know, over torque these bolts, cause the thread to stretch or the bolt to snap. So, so just be mindful if you're gonna use a gun. This is a 1/4 inch. It's not too strong, and just be careful not to just overdo it, right? If you're gonna use something like this. So I'm just going in, just zapping it a little bit till it gets a little bit past snug. And then I'll probably go over it with a wrench, right? You may want to torque it to spec. It's up to you. All right, guys, so pretty much we got this thing wrapped up. So we got the completed front valve cover gasket, rear valve cover gaskets, including the spark plug well seals and the grommets for the bolts. So I kind of checked over everything, made sure I wasn't missing any plugs that weren't unplugged, any wire harnesses that weren't secured properly. My bolt tray, nut tray is completely empty. That's a good thing, because if you have any bolts or nuts left over, that means you're missing something, right? I had some bolts and nuts up here, nothing there, so that's good. I'll put this away. So that pretty much wraps it up, guys. I hope you caught some value out of this. And if you have any questions about any of the tools, any of the parts, any of the procedures, don't hesitate to leave them down below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I appreciate you guys watching. See you on the next one. Thanks.